Hi, I'm Julie Thompson. Welcome to the Pembroke School Committee Candidate Interview. I want to take a moment to thank our candidate for participating in this interview and collaborating with PAC TV to bring this informational programming to residents and voters this election season. Let me explain the format. We will be conducting a one-on-one interview-style Q&A format with each candidate, lasting about 30 minutes. Responses will not be timed, and follow-up questions may be asked during this format. We aim to ask up to 4 questions, but that will depend on the length of the responses, along with any follow-up discussion during this exchange. Candidates will be allowed to address anything not covered or what they would like to add clarification to at the end of the interview in their closing remarks. Let's get started. Today we're speaking with Lance Kennedy, one of the 4 candidates running for the 2 full-term seats for the Pembroke School Committee in the Pembroke Town election. Lance, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to get right into the questions.
Excellent.
Okay, question number 1. The subject of social-emotional support for both students and teachers is prevalent in budgets and conversations surrounding the entire school district. In all 3 educational levels, elementary, middle, and high school specifically, how do you think these efforts have been successful? And what is your vision for including them moving forward?
Sure. Those that have been with us over the last couple of years, they know this has been a big focus of ours at the school committee. We know the effects that the pandemic had on our students, and we continue to see on a daily basis. Various things that we have really put in place to try to help those students are we put in spaces for them to go and feel comfortable. We've provided support animals so they can come into those spaces and feel comfortable. We've put extra resources into our guidance area and into staffing to help with those needs. So I think as a district and in my time that I've been on the school committee, it's been very important focus of ours. From a budgetary standpoint, as you mentioned, we've put the dollars behind it. We've added several staff during those years. We've added community space for students to get away if they can't handle their time in the classroom, if they feel anxious or if they feel nervous or whatever's happening to them at that moment. We've provided an opportunity for them to get away. And then as we look to the future, this is a big priority of ours. We continue to, even in this year where we're having to make some difficult challenges from a budget choice standpoint, these are some of the things that we want to continue to see and have, and I've put my support behind.
Now, obviously, it's very different, the students in the elementary versus middle versus high school.
Sure.
Can you just explain the different services that you offer or support that you provide to each of those levels?
Yep, and I think from the elementary level, obviously, it's a little bit more challenging for the young people to express themselves, right? So it's be able to provide staff that can help them work through some of the challenges they have, whether it's at home or during the school time, to help them work through that, to express that, whether it's through art, whether it's through various mediums, to be able to express what's going on in their lives, and then help put the family supports, because we know really at that age, in all the ages, but even more important at the elementary age, to put those family supports around, to be able to help the parents as they support their own child through that process. So it's putting the community resources behind that. You know, at the middle school and the high school level, those kids can express themselves a little more, but even I have a middle schooler, and I know at times it's a challenge. The way the behavior gets expressed may come out one way, but the feelings are another. And I think for us to continue to put that guidance in the staff support around, so that they know they have a safe place to go. We know the challenges now with the economics and the various things that are going on in families' lives that often can get pushed onto the children. And so they're coming with that baggage to school. And how do we help them unpack that? How do we help them be able to survive in that middle school area where kids are trying to figure themselves out? And I know I had a child go through sort of that phases during the pandemic, and when you're missing some of those social cues and things that you would have normally going to school together, and then all of a sudden you're not at school together, and then you're at school but through a computer. Some of those human skills that we tend to pick up, and especially in the middle school as we're trying to figure out who we are a big challenge. And so we want to continue to put supports there that are going to help them. And at the high school level, we've put in places where we know kids have missed school because they just don't feel comfortable being in that environment. So we've set up the Compass Room so that they can come in and catch up with the work in an environment that they don't feel like they're just getting pushed into and have to catch up right away, that they can work at their pace, slowly catch up, and be in an environment where they feel comfortable to be able to get back on track.
Okay. Now, what about the teachers? Because they are parents, they're teachers, they're they're everything
Absolutely.
sometimes to these kids. What are you doing for the teachers?
Right, in the same sort of environment. We want to create an environment where the teachers feel comfortable. It's okay to miss a day, right? It's okay to take a day for themselves. They're pouring of themselves and did an amazing job through the pandemic to be there for their students. They've got to take the time for themselves as well. And I think both from a professional development standpoint, we've put opportunities in place so that they can figure out what's best going to work for them, whether it's a mindfulness seminar or some other activities that are going to help their own personal growth and support, making sure that they know that they can take the time that they need to do that, and we'll put the resources there that they can take that time and make sure the classes are covered so they don't feel guilty, because they take great pride in supporting their classroom, but they also need to know they need to take care of themselves. And I think that's something we've made it a priority as a district as well, to make sure they feel that support.
That's wonderful. And so all of these programs are built into the budget for next year?
They are.
Okay, they will continue.
Yes, so, and for those that have been a part of this process, our budget is really, we've seen over the last few years, we've had great support from the federal and state level through the pandemic funds. This is a challenging year for us.
Yeah.
So we're doing our best to maintain level service, at least, to get those programs that we've put in place of support, that those remain. So those are remaining in our current budget. Yes.
Okay, and I hope that continues.
Yes.
Okay.
If not, expand.
Yeah, great. Okay. Question number 2. The budget includes mandates, collective bargaining outcomes, facility and technology maintenance and upgrades, and dealing with the long, lingering impacts of COVID. How do you approach the subject of priorities when looking at the budget? And I know that is a loaded question.
It is. But I think sort of we touched a little bit about it. We've just come through that prioritizing of our budget. And the challenge is we had some great presentations from all our leadership from different departments, and they've expressed some great opportunities that they want to see to improve our educational system. And the challenges we're going to see fiscally this year, I think, may not allow that to happen. And I think that's the challenge as we prioritize. This year it was, what do we need? We needed more special ed support. So we had to put that there as part of the mandate you talked about.
Yeah.
It's from the state level. There's a certain ratio that we needed to have, so we needed to add a staff to there.
Ratio in the class?
Yes, as far as we have X amount of students in the program,
Yep.
we need to provide that many staff to support based on the state ratio.
Okay.
So that was something we added in. But there were many things that we had to pull out of that to sort of balance that process because we needed to prioritize that. And I think that's always a challenge we have, and I know some of my colleagues will talk about the unfunded mandates that the state tends to put on us.
Can you explain what that is
Sure.
for the people that don't understand what an unfunded mandate is?
Sure. Oftentimes it's a priority from the state that they would like to see us as a district make happen, whether it's a certain educational platform or requirements that they put on us from a teaching standpoint, a ratio standpoint, things like that, but there's no funding behind that.
Right.
So
you have to do this, but you're not getting any
you have
money
to do this,
it.
but
Okay.
we're not giving you state funds to do that. And really,
Figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And we see sort of 2 buckets of funding. We see Chapter 70 funds from the state,
Yep.
and then our circuit breaker, which is where our special needs programs get supported from the state. So those are sort of set up, but these unfunded mandates really are ones, and they do grow every year as we see, but I think we understand why they do that. Their focus is trying to improve education.
Right.
We'd like to think that our district doesn't need those oftentimes because we have a high standard and we want to maintain that standard. So we like to think we get above those mandates and make sure our level of education is high and a strong priority of ours. So back to the question about budget and how do we prioritize. It's a challenge. We are a district that's just about 20 years old now after we moved from Silver Lake, and we're finding that our facilities and many of the infrastructure that we invested in 20 years ago is starting to come to the end of its lifespan.
Yeah.
So I think that's a challenge we have as a district to work with our town, work with our select board and our community to see how do we sort of put a system in place that we can start to address some of those big facility concerns. And then a big challenge of ours, and I'm sure we may talk about it later, is our VOTEC program. And how do we take our existing facilities or look at some of the other VOTEC programs in the community, and how do we make sure that we can provide a program for them? So
Yeah, we'll do a whole
Yep.
separate
I
question on
figured
that
we'd
one.
get
Yeah,
to, sure. But I think prioritizing it now is really what do we need to maintain the level of service that we had to get through this year, and some forecasting from the town leadership has shown that hopefully next year we'll be in a different place and we can continue to move forward on some of our priorities.
Now, let me ask you about collective bargaining and salaries for all the staff. Clearly, I mean, many people feel that teachers are not paid.
Are underpaid.
Yes, they're not paid what they should be paid.
Absolutely.
Understandable. They have such an important job for our children. What kind of a leeway do you guys have with the unions as far as what you can give them for well-deserved raises that you might not be able to afford to do?
Sure, and I think that's the great challenge, especially as a volunteer working with the school committee, right? We want to see those people we work with and partner with on a daily basis be rewarded for the great work they do, and they're providing services and support to our young people and our children. And I think, so I think we want to, when we go to the negotiating table, we want to make sure they know we're coming with an honest background, that we want to negotiate honestly with them. We understand the value that they bring,
right.
And we want them to know that we're doing the best we can to get them the support that they need. And I think that's the challenge. We're a piece of that bigger town budget, right?
Right.
So, and the town does support us through the benefits that we get and through that retirement plan. So I think it's understanding the bigger picture, and then when we look at where other raises or whether other growth is in the town, we want to try to make sure we can maintain that for our own teachers, to make sure they're growing at an equal pace.
Right.
But that is always a priority of ours, to make sure. We know during the pandemic they took a 0 one year. And so how do we support them when they were supporting us to get through difficult times, right? So that's always going to be a priority for those on our negotiating team as we work with them a little bit until our next contract. But when that comes up, we want to make sure we negotiate with them fairly, absolutely.
Right. And I know that each of the departments kind of gave you their own presentation.
Yes.
The athletic department, the art, all of them did.
Yes.
How does that affect you as a group when you look at these? And each of them obviously made a wonderful case for their own, their own center of interest, and yet you have to think about everybody.
Right.
How do you circle that square?
It's really hard because, right, you sit there one week, you're listening, you're all excited and ready to give them all the money, and then the next week you're like, ooh, those are good too, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's a challenge, especially so for the 5 of us on the committee. We've got to sort of see that bigger picture, right? Because we're all come with our own passions and our support, right? I had kids come through the music department. I've had kids do sports.
Yep.
So obviously each of those areas are special and unique. My father was a teacher for 35 years, so education in general is important to me.
Yeah.
So and I've been a teacher at one point in my career. So I understand that side of it, and I know what they need. And when they come and give these presentations, like you said, we just want to open our checkbook and say, here, let's go.
Here you go. Right.
And I think the challenge for us is to sort of put through the lens of, we look at first priority, second priority, third priority, right? And so what's a must? It's that first priority. So and the superintendent and her team does an excellent job of sort of presenting that to us. And then ultimately those difficult decisions had to be made. I sat with my colleague in budget subcommittee the other day, and we had to find $500,000. And that's a challenge, right? That's not even looking at new programs and where we can put that money.
Yeah.
As we sit there and we looked at opportunities of retirement came up and a few other things came up, so we knew we'd have some money, and normally we'd reinvest that.
Yeah.
And this year it was just filling a gap. And
Yeah.
I think that's the struggles we have as a volunteer, is knowing we need to be fiscally responsible to our community. So we need to make those sound decisions so that we're having an equal effect on the tax base and those that support the school system. But in the same respect, we see what it does to education, and we know if we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards when it comes to education. So it's a constant, especially now, it's a constant struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you have problems retaining or getting teachers? Is that a field that is now?
Well, and that's a good point. Right now, I think we do a great job of retaining, and our team has some great longevity. We look at retirements. We only had one this year at the elementary level. So teachers stay with us. I think we've gotten the salary base to a point where we're competitive, and we want to make sure we maintain that, because as we look at other districts, we want to make sure we don't want to lose our talent. We have some amazing talent. I've had kids come through all levels at this point, and they've done an amazing job. Right now we are competitive, but I think if we trend where we are from a fiscal standpoint, we may not have that edge.
Yeah, okay. Good question. Okay, question number 3. There is much discussion and a few options on the table regarding vocational education offerings for Pembroke students.
Sure.
What is your opinion on each of the options, and when do you think one will come to fruition, if at all?
Sure. so the biggest one being South Shore Votech, and the opportunity.
Can you just explain that for anybody who doesn't kind of know what that option is?
Sure. So to be a part of South Shore Votech, you need to become a member.
Okay.
So there's a process to that. That process has started. At the next town meeting, they'll have a chance to vote to assemble a committee that will, it's really an exploratory committee. There's no finances involved.
Okay.
It's a chance to put a committee together, and that committee exists. The town of Marshfield is going through it now.
Yep.
They will vote on whether to join at the town of Marshfield this spring, and then the 8 communities that are a part of South Shore Votech now, 6 of the 8 have to vote to allow Marshfield in. We're obviously a step behind that. We need to put the committee together. We'll be a piece of staff from South Shore Votech and leadership from Pembroke, just to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
What does that mean from us from a finance standpoint? What does it mean from a district standpoint, from leadership and all of that? So that will come before the community, and they'll have an opportunity to vote on that. We felt as a community, as a school committee, that it was important to put that in front of, because ultimately there may be a $17 million price tag behind that, right? And I think the challenge of funding, they have requirements to join, which there's some upfront costs, so we're looking maybe at $1 million or so to get involved up front, and then they're in the process of a capital project, which that's where the bigger dollars come in. So each district will pay a share of that $150 million project.
Is that to expand it so that they can have more students?
It is, exactly that. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
But you're looking at a 3 to 5 year window for that project to take place.
Before that even, right.
So, and we've been, the superintendent shared with us from South Shore Votech that they may not even look at other districts until that project might be done. So it may be a little time, but we felt as a district it's important that we get part of that process and move that forward.
Okay. Now, what about Silver Lake?
Yes. So
let's
talk about our other option,
Yeah.
right? Silver Lake. So there's sort of been, we've had an agreement, and the school committee made prior to my joining the committee, but the decision was made to make Silver Lake our Votech school of choice.
Okay.
So that if a student in our district wanted to join, and we had an arrangement with the superintendent at Silver Lake, that our students would be accepted there in their programs. At the state fund educational level, they changed some of that policy recently. And they've required that Silver Lake take students from their district that they have priority over students from other districts first. Okay. So traditionally it has been a student from Pembroke would take a test. Depending on how they scored, they could be higher ranked than some of the Silver Lake students and have an opportunity to get in ahead of time. So now students, no matter where they are on the wait list at Silver Lake, have an opportunity to get in before Pembroke students. So we saw roughly 15 to 18 students every year from Pembroke. Last year we had none. Okay. Because students on the wait list, and we found, and rightfully so, during the pandemic, a lot of students wanted to be part of Votech programs. They find, it's a chance to relook at education, and for many, that was a vein of a path that they found that is really for them. And we know that there's those kids in it, and I have some of my son's friends that's their path. I know they're 8th grade now, and I know that's where they should be. And that's the challenge, I think, for me, is how do I get them there? And there's no real short-term answers. I think until the state can change some of those policies to allow us back in, then Silver Lake's not going to be on the table right now. I think they're trying to, just like all Votech programs, are really trying to expand their opportunities. So. Yep. So
is there a chance or an opportunity to bring any of the more popular programs that people would more likely want to go into Pembroke High School, to expand it there?
Sure, and that's sort of that third option, right?
Yeah.
So we've had dialogue internally about what can we do in-house. So we started a few years back when we looked at our Pathways program.
Yep.
So
can you explain what that is?
Sure, our Pathways program is really what can we do from sort of outside the educational box thinking to provide opportunities for kids that may want it. So we started with a business pathway, a computer science pathway, various pathways that within our facilities we can support, but it gives students an opportunity that are outside your traditional educational components. So we're starting to see kids coming through the program that will graduate this year through those pathways. And they've had internship opportunities. They've had a chance to get as part of a community. So we said, all right, it's sort of a school without walls, right? How do we get them outside, involved in the community, different businesses partnered with us, and have those opportunities that they wouldn't normally have as part of that education? So I think the other piece is we're looking at a little bit of decline in our enrollment, right? So that's provided some space for us. I think so ultimately, when we talk about financial decisions, we may have the space, but it's going to cost us a little bit, right? So if we're potentially paying $17 million to join South Shore Votech, could that 17 million renovate some of our facilities or add to our facilities, and we could have our own program. So I think each one of those components is something we're looking at as a school committee, and there's going to be most likely some sort of financial tag behind it.
Yeah.
But we know the value of VOTEC programs and where it has gone over the last 4 to 5 years, and we know we're seeing the population grow that wants to really participate in that. So I think it's priority for myself, and we really want to see that grow as a school district.
Right, and that's everywhere. That's, you know, it's in every single town.
It is one, and I think and I'm hoping the pressure from the state will, pressure from those communities that really want to be a part of it. Right now, it's ourselves, Hull and Duxbury, that aren't connected to any VOTEC program.
Right.
So how do we, is it maybe well, Hull's a little farther away, but do we talk with Duxbury and say, hey, what can we do together and see? So we're going to explore every avenue we can. We've reached out to local businesses to try to get our youth involved outside of the educational services where maybe their passions are, and we'll continue to do that, but there will be no stone unturned during this process.
Sure, yeah, that's a lot to work on. Yeah. Okay, here's the fourth question. If someone asked you to describe the educational experience that a student would have in the town of Pembroke, what would you say are the greatest strengths and the most critical areas that need improvement, if you were being totally honest?
Sure.
So this is somebody who wants to move to Pembroke, and they're deciding based on the school system.
Yeah.
What would you say?
That's a great question, because I think you sort of put it in the lens of how would someone new come into it.
Yeah.
So I have my lens through my children, right? So that's the best way that I can share. But now I have a different lens also being part of the school committee. Yep. So looking at both those lenses, I know we have amazing staff. And so they have staff that are passionate and they care about the students. And I've seen that through my kids. We moved back into the community when my son was in first grade and my daughter was in sixth grade. And they were welcomed in. They were taken in. They were caught up in areas maybe they needed to caught up because we moved halfway through the school year. Yeah. My son, who started in first grade, was trying to meet new friends and all that process. And the staff and the leadership there were tremendous. So I was able to see that. And now I've seen the other side of it. I've seen a group of leaders and team that have brought our kids through a pandemic where I had one child that was amazing studying independently, and another needed to be with his friends. Yeah. And it was a struggle to go through that process, right? And so I've seen staff step in and support, and I know they care, and they helped get my children through that difficult time. And I've seen them on the other side now. I've seen the leaders and the passion they have to support their team. So when someone shares about they would like to come to our community and be a part of our school system, I would say they're going to be lucky, because we have a team that's going to care about their children, that's hopefully given the highest level of education they have. We invest tremendously in our professional development. So we want to give the resources to our teachers so that they're at the highest level they can be to teach our students, and that continues to be a priority for us. Our leadership has gotten grants and tremendous set of resources that are necessarily free to us so that we can do that for our staff, and we prioritize time to do that. So I think I would tell someone coming into our community, welcome, and we're excited to have you because you're going to be in for a great experience.
So what are the negatives? There's got to be some. What are the negatives?
Sure. I mean, it's like with anything. I think right now resources we're struggling, right? So with that, we'd like to do so much more. And there's things that other districts are probably doing that we can't do yet. It's not for lack of vision, because I think that's there. The pandemic helped as we look at our resources. We were able to bring on some capital, whether it was technology or other things, to sort of help catch us up. And we'll continue to invest in those, but I think there's still resources we need to continue to take our education system to that next level, and I think we'll continue to work towards seeing that grow.
Okay. I do have a fifth question that I think I'll ask you because we do have time.
Sure.
We have about 10 minutes left of our total. I just want to ask you about security. Now, obviously, it's a heartbreaking situation in our world and in our country, and it has to be taken seriously. Absolutely. So what would you say A to F grade Pembroke does in terms of preparing for security at the different levels of school?
Sure. And again, what I've been privy to is, as you shared, as a district, we take this very seriously. Anytime there is a situation, we address it with our families and our students. We do follow-up. We provide resources for those students because they're seeing this, unfortunately, on a daily basis now, and many add that on top of the pandemic situation. Anxiety is huge, and many students may not feel comfortable coming to school. So one is putting those resources there to support them for that they do, but then from a security standpoint, it's making sure that we're following the protocols that we have in place. The team has done an amazing job of making sure, and unfortunately, we've gone through these situations, so we're aware. We've seen best practices, and we make sure that we're following those best practices. Our support and our partnership with the police department in town is tremendous. We have a school resource officer that does an amazing job, and I think those partnerships to making sure that our buildings are secure, as well as the staff are well prepared to be able to handle those situations. It's something you hope never happens, but you have to prepare for. I've been a part, is my role in different things, to be a part of those teams that have to pull those out, and even just the drills can be scary, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So obviously young children have to know that security and safety is important without thinking that the world is a bad place.
Right.
And that's how do you prepare them but not scare them?
Right.
How do you
Well,
do?
and I think I put that in the hands of our great guidance team, right? And we've got our psychologists and our support staff that are really the professionals in those fields. And I think that's the unique thing about the school district, is we have that professional level, right? That we can provide that support. They really know what they're doing. Oftentimes, I would look to that, right? Because these are areas that, as adults, we question and we wonder, and so oftentimes we need to go to our leadership, but it's built into what we have from our staff at the school district, and they continue to do the best they can as far as educate themselves, go to training and support that they need, so that when the time comes, they can support our students.
Great. Okay. So why don't you take 2 or 3 minutes to just talk about anything else you want to add, or a closing, and you can talk right to the camera here and talk to the people that will vote for you or not vote for you.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to thank the community for the opportunity. I joined the school committee as an appointed position, which I greatly appreciate the support there, and then I was blessed enough to be elected in for my first official term for the last couple of years, and here this is my first re-election. I think it's been a great opportunity to be a part of a community. My wife's family grew up in Pembroke, so Pembroke has been a part of my life for the last 20 plus years. My family is deeply enrooted, and the school committee, at this time, we've just come through some great challenges, obviously through the pandemic, and I think now, as we continue to move forward, there's some big things on the table that I'm excited about seeing where we can go as a district, where we take our VOTEC programs, where we continue to grow our technology, where we grow our pathways, where we continue to see our sports programs grow, where we take our facilities, all these different pieces, and I think that's what continues to drive me to be a part of this. So I appreciate the support we have, and I look forward to hopefully getting your support at the elections coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Lance, for participating in this interview. We wish you the best of luck throughout your campaign and in the election. For our viewers, thank you for joining us. If you're interested in watching replays of this interview, please visit our website, pactv.org, for replay times and online viewing options, including PacTV's on-demand and streaming service, PacTV Prime. Please make your choices heard by voting in the town election on Saturday, May 13th. Thank you, and good day.